Hey, I'm still dealing with this blues, y'all. Blues and preaching. Still thinking about the blues. The more I sit with it, the more I realize that the blues has within it the keys to help us to become better preachers. Taking it seriously is going to help us to become better preachers. When we talking specifically about the issue of truth telling in the pulpit, because the blues artist sings the truth, at least from his perspective or her perspective. Sometimes when we talk about the truth telling, however, in the pulpit, we sometimes jump to using theological words, jumping to deep exegesis, jumping to seeing what others have said about that particular text. And it's important for us to do that kind of thing. But the blues specifically reminds me that truth doesn't always come from books or degrees. Truth rises up from the dirt, y'all. The blues was born in fields and shacks. It came from folks who were scraping by, working themselves to the bone, trying to survive heartbreak. That's why it speaks with such honesty. And honesty, that's the preaching we need. The blues starts in the dirt. Blues preaching doesn't float above real life. It names the sicknesses that we're dealing with, whether it be racism, job loss, sleepless nights, even if it's just that your baby left you. The blues is the truth set to music, they used to say. Job preached like that when he cursed the day that he was born. Job 3. Bessie Smith sang like that when she wailed, nobody loves you when you're down and out. There's something about being willing to stand in the dirt without cleaning it up and speaking from that place. That's what makes the blues real, and that's also what can make your preaching real. Standing in the dirt and preaching from there. No sugarcoating is allowed. Sometimes our preaching can jump straight to victory too quickly. Hold on. God is gonna fix it. God's gonna make a way. God's gonna guide you through. God's gonna. Sometimes we jump there too quickly. But the blues don't let you off the hook that easy. The blues doesn't allow you to get there too quickly. The blues comes along and says, I'm holding on. Yes, I am holding on. But I'm still bleeding. Yes, I'm still bleeding. And that aspect, the bleeding aspect, that aspect, that struggle there is what the blues brings us, because it ain't gonna sugarcoat. I'm gonna tell you how I feel right now. Jesus had that same thing on the cross when he quoted Psalm 22 and said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Skip James hit that same note when he sang Hard Time Killing Floor Blues, where trouble is so heavy you can't see the way out. That's the kind of honesty that we need, because our people are fighting, struggling with real issues. Unpaid bills, depression, fractured families, and community violence right now. If all we preach is heaven later, we miss the God who shows up in our struggle. And not only that, if we preaching so quickly about God who turns it around, God who makes a way out of no way, and that is the true God, but if you never deal with the times that God didn't show up the way you wanted God to show up, There's something about a gospel that allows God to show up not just by making the way out of no way, but God show up even in the midst of that thing that ain't turning around. God ain't afraid of the dark, y'all. The blues knows that God can handle your anger. Blues preaching, y'all. God can handle your doubt, your questions. God doesn't necessarily answer all of our questions. In fact, many of our questions are not answered, but that ain't the point, y'all. Habakkuk prayed when Habakkuk prayed, how long, O Lord? He did. That's a question, y'all. The old spiritual comes in, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home. That just carries lament, y'all. That just carries struggle. Something is wrong if you can feel that and you can't state that to your God. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Something is wrong if you can't preach that, if you can't sing that to your God. Can your God hear that and interact with you? No apologies, just the truth. A long way from home. And it's that kind of honesty that makes room for real hope. Not a hope where you've denied your questions, not a hope where you've set aside your questions. And yes, it's true, you're not going to get the answers to all those questions. You know, sometimes it's only going to be on the other side when we're going to get the answer to all of these questions. But real hope stems from that interaction with a God who can handle what we are saying. God can handle what we're scared to say, even out loud. The now shapes the not yet. Too much preaching acts like this life doesn't even matter. Comes in and you're talking about glory on the other side. Even if that glory isn't even in the other side in glory in heaven, even if the glory is down here where you got your new job, you got your new house, you got your new whatever. We're emphasizing that, but we got to keep understanding that there is a God who is with us in that struggle we find ourselves right now. Too much preaching act like this life doesn't matter, but the blues says it does. Justice, dignity, joy right now. These are signs of God's coming kingdom breaking in. Yes, the blues comes in, and I can sing the blues because I do not see this right now. Jesus understood that in Luke 4 when he said his mission was good news for the poor, freedom for the captive, healing for the broken. Sam Cooke comes in and carries that same tension of the future, but the future not here, but today I still can believe in something when he said, it's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come, y'all. He carries that same tension, present struggle, and future hope held together. This is the greatness of this music that we have crafted in America. This is what has been born from the struggles of our people, is holding on to this tension of present struggle and future hope. Jesus didn't just talk about heaven. He fed the hungry, touched the sick, called out injustice. And that's the blues preaching approach. You care for the whole person, not just in the afterlife. And not just on the other side after God done healed, giving you everything that you need. No, right now at this point. What does this look like in the pulpit, y'all? Let lament breathe. Preach like the exiles in Psalm 137 who said, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If you can't preach that, then your gospel is limited to folks who's going through real stuff. Call out the big sins, the ones we like to ignore. Amos did it when he thundered, let justice roll down like waters. Tell real stories about real people, the way Jesus did in Mark 5 when he sought out the man everyone else left dead in the graveyard. In Mark 5, he went to go find the brother in the graveyard and show that God moves at midnight, not just at sunrise. Say that again, y'all. God moves at midnight. When you are in the depths of your pain, when you are in the depths of your struggle, and you cry out, my God, why? I am not going to put you down. I'm not going to try to lead you somewhere else. I'm going to allow that pain to do its work and do its job. That's blues preaching. Yes, it doesn't end there, but not because I took you from there, but because just the mere articulation of our pain, the mere articulation of our struggle brings with it some sort of release and some sort of rise. Paul and Silas sang from jail in Acts 16 before they even saw the chains break. That's the same faith you hear in trouble in mine, but I'm blue. But I won't be blue always. I know the sun gonna shine my back door someday. When you preach like this, you're not preaching despair, you're preaching the whole gospel, and the gospel can handle the dirt. In fact, it comes up and grows out of the dirt. I'm not gonna lie, I used to think I was doing this already. I talked about preaching to grandma and them. I'd mentioned real issues. I even made sure to talk about the bad news so that the good news would come in and land harder as it overcomes the bad news. But if I'm honest, I still wasn't letting the blues touch everything. Even what I called celebration. Maybe I just needed to live a little more. Maybe I needed to open my eyes wider to pain and struggle. The blues has definitely changed me. Taught me to take lament seriously. Showed me that God's people don't always dance. Sometimes they limp. Just like Jacob did after that long night of wrestling with God. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Genesis 32:31. That limp is a reminder. When you wrestle with God and with the real weight of this world, you will not preach the same. The blues leaves a mark. Blues preaching, and your people are going to hear it. As you prepare your next sermons, pause and ask, where have I named the pain clearly? Where have I let lament breathe? Where am I tempted to wrap things up too neatly? Did I rush to my hoop too quick? Did I get there too fast? When you slow down and tell the truth, God will meet you right in the dirt. And it's in the dirt where real hope begins, y'all.